welcome back. It is May, so this is the first video I'm recording in May. Ignore this little herpy that I have right here. Not sure if you guys can see that. Oh, you guys can see that. It's not a herpy. It is... Listen, you're not supposed to shave on top of like two pimples, especially like right beside each other. And it was one of those like really hard ass pimples. And I knew this. I knew I wasn't supposed to shave on top of it. And I don't know, I think it just blanked out and I shaved on it. I'm like, as soon as I shaved over, I was like, there it is. I know this is going to look horrible for the next 2 weeks. And granted, that is my assumption. But yeah, ignore the herpy. It's not actually a herpy, obviously. But if you do have herpes, well, today is your lucky day because I'm going to teach you how to manifest away your herpes. The Abdullah way. So yeah, today I want to talk about Neville Goddard's story with Abdullah. So Abdullah is Neville's sensei, basically. He is Neville's mentor. And this is a really important story. And I think many of you guys need to watch this video to the end because many of you are in the exact same position as Neville was as he was talking to Abdullah and as he was trying to manifest his trip back to Barbados. So what do I mean by that is that Neville constantly tried to poke Abdullah and say, one more question, one more question, one more question. And you're not supposed to do that. You guys are doing the exact same thing. I know you guys are doing the exact same thing where many of you are like one more video, one more video, one more TikTok, one more reel, one more YouTube short, one more Twitter conversation of a success story, one more look at the deep dark web, one more page of Neville Goddard's book, one more Kabbalah page. And we'll talk about that as well. Again, Abdullah taught Neville the truth of the Bible and the Kabbalah. So we'll talk about parts of it, but my point is many of you guys are in the exact same position as Neville, and I'm here to give you guys the Abdullah treatment. The Abdullah treatment is an absolute guillotine to the old story. So yeah, let's get into the actual story, and let me move my camera. There you guys can see it. And again, this is my PDF from my old video, my first ever video on this channel, where it was like a 2-hour-long video of me saying that, me trying to explain how manifestation and human imagination creates reality. So we're going to just go off my first PDF file here. So if you don't know the story, Neville was born in Barbados. He goes to New York, and this was during the Great Depression. Neville around this time was 26 years old, which is incredibly young, and many of you should feel pretty grateful that if you're someone who understands law of assumption, even in your 30s, that is still like 50 extra years you have where you can fulfill every single one of your fantasies. And Neville himself is 26. I know people in the law of assumption community that are 19. They're 19. And they understand the law of assumption. That is for the next 80 years of their life that they get to fantasize and bring all their amazing fantasies and movie-like tropes into the real world, whether it's through love or money or diddy parties, whatever they want to do. Don't do the last part. Whatever they want to do, they get to do it. So my point is, be grateful that you learned this at a young age. And Neville was 26 years old when he learned it. And right now I'm 23 and I learned it a couple of years ago as well. But my point, back to the story, Neville was 26 years old during the Great Depression. And he lived in New York City. And Neville said during the Great Depression, if you can't afford to watch someone, if you can't afford to eat food, you're not going to be able to watch someone dance. And Neville was a dancer. Dancing is not a real job. In the same way what I do is not a real job, and how playing Fortnite for a living is not a real job. The only real jobs in the world are supply chain and a few others. Dancing is not a real job. So Neville didn't have that many skills. And maybe you can apply this to the real world today, now that Iran has closed off the Strait of Hormuz and 1/5 of the world's energy is offline. You could argue that a global depression is going to happen. And again, if you assume that it's not going to happen, then it's not going to happen. But there are many people who are spiritually asleep, and they believe that a global depression is about to happen because Iran closed off the Strait of Hormuz. And if they work fake jobs, they will actually be affected by it. But if you guys understand the law of assumption, you guys will get past this global depression that is about to happen because Iran closed off the Strait of Hormuz. But back to the story, and I know I've rambled off so much at the start of this video already. Neville was poor and dirt poor. He says in the video, like, he had no money, and he means no money at all. We're talking about can't afford a place to sleep, basically. And Neville, again, is a dancer, and the unemployment rates are sky high. And Neville has one goal and one desire, and that is to be with his family in Barbados. And Neville, very, very, very luckily, meets Abdullah. Meeting Abdullah in a time like this, that is like literally in prime OG Fortnite, seeing a golden scar and a chug jug and a purple tactical shotgun all in the same area. That is how rare and how amazing it is that Abdullah was right there in the exact position where he needed to be. So Neville got very lucky. But either way, Abdullah lives 3 streets near Neville, next to Neville, and Neville goes to him and they talk and they're friends. And Neville says to Abdullah, I really want to go back to Barbados and spend time with my family. And he said, nothing stops me besides money, the lack of money. I have no money. That is the only thing that is stopping me. And Abdullah looks him in the eyes and says, you are in Barbados. Neville says, I am in Barbados? He said, yes, you are in Barbados. And tonight when you go to sleep, this was Neville's exact quote, he was telling me if I want something, I must now, in that moment I want it, I assume that I have it, I want to go to Barbados, I'm in Barbados. So this night when I sleep in Barbados. How? In my imagination. And again, even the CIA gateway experiment that the CIA files exposed, that there was this gateway experiment where astral projection and some other stuff was real. And obviously you have so many other science experiments like the Schrodinger's cat experiment that I just made a video about like 2 weeks ago that proved this. But yeah, Neville was told basically you are in Barbados. You're not going to Barbados. You're in Barbados right now. And you have to view the world through the lens of being in Barbados. And like Neville always says, there is a vast difference between thinking of your desire and thinking from your desire. Abdullah was trying to teach him to basically think from the end, which is Barbados. And Neville, again, Neville tried that a little bit. I'll just expand the story a little bit. I won't jump ahead. But that story happens at late October and early November. For the next month, Neville is trying to ask Abdullah, hey, can I ask you one more question? Abdullah kept slamming the door in his face, saying, you are in Barbados. And Neville tried asking one more question, just like how a lot of you keep thinking to yourself, one more video, one more TikTok, one more YouTube short, one more Sammy Ingram video, one more Neville Goddard lecture, one more Joseph Murphy chapter. Nope, you're not supposed to do that. You are in Barbados, you have your desire immediately. But right at the end, Abdullah did tell Neville one last time, you are in Barbados and you sleep tonight in Barbados because you can't go to Barbados. You are in Barbados. And Neville wakes up and he sees a letter and he gets a letter from his brother. And Neville says, the letter said that the trip is fully paid off and here's some extra money for an extra suit or whatever you need. This ticket that Neville got was a third-class ticket. But Neville didn't care. Neville was incredibly excited. He was euphoric, probably had an orgasm, who knows. It was like winning the Super Bowl, basically. He felt amazing. And Neville goes up to Abdullah and says, holy crap, Abdullah, I am going to Barbados. He's like, oh my God, I'm going to Barbados. Oh my God, I'm going to go to Barbados. I'm going to see my family. I'm going to spend Christmas there. I gotta go third class, but who cares about going third class? But whatever, I'm going third class, but I'm still going. And Abdullah was like, nope, you're in Barbados, motherfucker. Who said you are going to Barbados? You already went to Barbados and you went first class. So Neville has a third class ticket. But Abdullah says, no, you're not going to Barbados. I don't care. You already went to Barbados. How can we discuss you going to Barbados if you already went to Barbados and you already went first class? That is what Neville was trying to teach him. You already went to Barbados. Like, you live in the end. This is birds before land. You live in the end. The guillotine is already dropped on the Neville that is still with the old story. The guillotine already dropped on that Neville. The new Neville is already in Barbados and he already went first class. And Neville wakes up. He was like, okay. And Abdullah wasn't even happy that he's going to Barbados. It was like a funny part of Neville's lecture. But Neville goes to sleep again saying, okay, I went to Barbados and I already went first class. And Neville wakes up in the morning and they said, yes, your ticket you can go back to the first class. Like, you're fine. You're going to go to first class. And Neville went first class, 10 days to Barbados, 10 days back. And he spent 3 heavenly months in Barbados. And then Neville goes back to Abdullah and Abdullah teaches him the Holy Bible, but also the Kabbalah. And Abdullah, here, let me look at the other photo of Abdullah. This photo. And Abdullah, to give a little backstory about Abdullah. Abdullah is a Ethiopian rabbi. He's black as well. So this was during the Jim Crow days. So he got nerfed twice. He was Jewish, a rabbi, and black. I think he was still wearing the turban. So he got nerfed in like many ways. Not the best identity to have during the Jim Crow days, like being a black Jewish person in Jim Crow laws days is like the equivalent of being a Drake fan in 2024 when Kendrick Lamar dropped those 2 diss tracks. And I know this because I'm a huge Drake fan and like it was hell on earth living in those 2 months. I had to like wear glasses and disguise every time I leave the house. And Neville even says Abdullah was a black man. And he walked out of the house like he was the most perfect Aryan race, best friends with the Austrian painter guy in the world, like a guy with white skin, blonde hair, and blue eyes. Like that's the aura that he had. Even though physically he's not, but he was like, I don't care. I'm going to walk wherever I want. And at this time, there were certain things that black people couldn't do that Abdullah just did. And Neville's like, holy crap, this dude has some aura. And Abdullah disillusioned Neville on so many things. Like, think about it. If he can not accept racism and anti-Semitism during his days, and he can look past those circumstances, I'm sure that many of you can very easily look past your circumstances of your person that you want in your life, your person that you're interested in, going to lunch with a third party or having Starbucks or posting on their story with another person or another girl or another guy. I'm sure your circumstances are not nearly as bad as this motherfucker's circumstances, which is literally like racist America, Jim Crow law America, and anti-Semitism wasn't that down at this time. Sure, it was a little bit down because the Holocaust casted a very large shadow, and at this time the shadow was still pretty strong. And ironically now it's actually, the shadow is kind of evaporating because a lot of people actually deny a lot of this stuff. Especially because, the Zionist movement and the Greater Israel Project and all this stuff and all the lies that they've been telling, and people have kind of been throwing it onto other parts of Jewish history. But regardless, if he can look past his circumstances of racism and Jim Crow law racism, literally worse than being a Drake fan in 2024, I'm sure you can look past your circumstances, which is, oh, my SP may have texted another gender last night. Oh my God. I'm sure you can look past that. I'm sure you can ignore that and actually live in your imagination just a little bit and live in the end. But yeah, that is the story on how Neville understood the law. And Neville says at the end of the lecture that for the next, I think, 5 years, maybe, I'm not sure. For the next many years, he went back and forth with Abdullah, and Abdullah taught him real Christianity and real Judaism. And this isn't really that hidden. Again, the Bible, according to Christians, is secular history, even though it's very obviously parables. It's not secular history. And I'm not saying there hasn't been any secular history in the Bible. Of course, I do think there was obviously someone near that time who did do a lot of great work against the Romans. But again, it's not secular history. And the Kabbalah, which is the Jewish interpretation from a kind of a more mystical perspective and a spiritual perspective, even many Jews don't really understand the Kabbalah. But the Kabbalah, and again, I read the Kabbalah so many years ago, and I kind of forget most of it. I do want to reread the Kabbalah, especially now with this whole Zionist Israel project, the Greater Israel Project that's going on, because a part of the Kabbalah is being interpreted to create Greater Israel right now in the Middle East. But I do want to reread the Kabbalah. But either way, the Kabbalah is also not secular. It is not teaching the stories of life or something, and the magics of life. They're teaching you that the world is an hallucination of your imagination, and your imagination and your consciousness is literally God. God is inside of you. Even Jesus in the Bible says the kingdom of God is inside of you. And because the kingdom of God is inside of you, the kingdom of God is not going to be destroyed by a little bullet. The kingdom of God is forever here. It's your consciousness, it's your imagination. And whatever you want in this world can be achieved by just dominantly assuming that you have what you have. You either have it or you don't. You have to assume that you have it. And that is what the Kabbalah and the Bible and Jesus were actually trying to teach, whether you think it's secular history or divine history, whatever it may be. But that is the absolute gem that was Abdullah. Abdullah also started teaching other rabbis this stuff, and he started teaching other mystics this stuff, and he was literally goated. He also taught Joseph Murphy. He also taught Joseph Murphy, who I read. I love Joseph Murphy, The Power of the Subconscious Mind. It is a absolute gem of a book. I love Joseph Murphy. Very underrated in the law of assumption community, in my opinion. But yeah, Abdullah was goated, and we can all take something from Abdullah. The whole, you are in Barbados and you're no longer in New York. You're in Barbados, just like Abdullah was almost like strangling Neville, like you're in Barbados. We can all take something from that. You have to ask yourself the question, whenever your desire pops up in your head, you got to think, if I had my desire, would I really be thinking this right now? Literally just think about it for a second. Just imagine, let's say you need to pay your rent, and your rent it needs to be paid in 2 weeks. And let's say your rent needs to be paid on let's go with a random date, January 20th. Pretend in your head that it's already January 21st. It's already January 22nd. And you can look back and say, oh, I already paid it. Why would I have these thoughts? Why would I worry so much if I already paid it? It's January 22nd and I already paid it. It might still be January 1st, but in your imagination, you're living in January 22nd and you already paid it. And you have to live by those thoughts. No, not live by those thoughts, but in your imagination, you're supposed to keep those thoughts at the front and center. And that's what Abdullah taught Neville. Keep those thoughts. You were in Barbados. You're not going to Barbados. Even if you see birds before land, even if you see all this tickets, you were already in Barbados and you already went first class. There's nothing else to do. You went to Barbados and you went first class. And as much as I do love things like robotically affirming and my own personal method that I posted last video, there is nothing like Abdullah just teaching him, dude, you don't need any method. You don't need any information. You don't need any book. You're in Barbados. Again, when Neville manifested himself going to Barbados, he didn't have to read the entire Kabbalah or the entire Bible or Plato or the Einstein quotes and the Carl Jung quotes. He didn't need any of that. All he did was, I'm in Barbados. And then I'm in Barbados. As soon as his dominant assumption became, I am in Barbados, he went to Barbados. And as soon as your dominant assumption is that your desire has already been externalized, that desire will be externalized immediately. I promise you, it'll be immediately. And now we know this because of the Schrodinger's cat experiment. It will always be immediately. You will get your desire immediately. There's no delay. Immediately, as soon as you change your dominant assumption, you will get your desire immediately. And yeah, just you don't need 85 techniques. Techniques are fine. I like techniques myself. You just need to put yourself in the state that you already have it. You are in Barbados. So whenever you think of your desire and thinking that you're trying to manifest, imagine Abdullah's face telling you, you already have it, and slamming the door to you, against you. Imagine that. The next time you're thinking about your desire, imagine Abdullah slamming the door saying, you're in Barbados or you're an idiot. Because how can you discuss with someone how you're going to Barbados if you're already in Barbados? So how can you discuss about paying the rent for January if you already paid the rent for January? How can you discuss getting your SP if you already have your SP? So just think about that, sink in that a little bit. You don't need my videos. You don't need anyone else's videos. You don't need any affirmations or techniques. Not saying they don't do great work. I use robotic affirmations as well. But just lock in and ask yourself the question, would I be having these thoughts if I already had my desire? And if the answer is no, then you're not living in the end. Only live in the end. Only tell yourself, I'm in Barbados. I already have this SP. I already have the money. But yeah, anyways, that's it for today's video. Just wanted to make a video about Abdullah and this crazy story because it's the only story that really makes me feel at home, because I read the Kabbalah, I read Neville's books, but as soon as I started this lecture and I listened to this lecture, that was the first time where I'm like, you know what? I get it now. I get it now. I wouldn't have to read these books if I already had my desire. I felt like I needed to chase. But as soon as I listened to Neville's lecture, this particular Neville lecture, I realized that I was constantly chasing. And Abdullah would be like, you're not supposed to chase because you're already in Barbados. How can you chase the goal of being in Barbados if you're already in Barbados? So this lecture in Pacific is really close to my heart. I love it. But yeah, anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully it helps some of you. And yeah, bye-bye.